I told you, if you are HIV positive, you have to pay attention to nitric oxide, because that is what the virus is after. The virus is going to knock out nitric oxide so that your immune system will not be able to fight back. When the HIV virus gets into the human body, its target is the cell. For bacteria, our immune system wants to suffocate the bacteria by overcrowding it. Or if it is for viruses, our immune system wants to stop the viruses from multiplying. These are two ways our immune system fights infections. One is to stop it from, one is to overcrowd and suffocate the bacteria. But if it is viruses, our immune system makes sure that it stops the virus from replicating. And these two subcellular inflammatory response to the presence of pathogens or microorganisms that cause infections, these two subcellular inflammatory response are both nitric oxide dependent. So if the immune system wants to overcrowd the bacteria, or if the immune system wants to prevent the virus from multiplying, everything depends on nitric oxide. So because the HIV virus knows this, it is going to come straight for nitric oxide through several ways, which we are going to discuss right now. Hello, this is Pure Health Revolution, and I welcome you specially to our Health Enlightenment series. Today, we are going to learn a lot about yourself. We are going to be talking about HIV. And if you're HIV positive and you still take sugar and eat sweetened beverages, I want to ask you one simple question. Why? Our ancestors had this in its pure and natural form. Today we have this ultra processed sugar. Now, the impact these two have differently on our immune system are quite different, and you're going to learn the implication of that today. By the end of this presentation, we are going to conclude with a scientific study published from the University of Lagos, and you will find out what our scientists in the University of Lagos Teaching Hospital has to say about the management of the HIV virus and the need to incorporate nutrition supplements as a complementary therapy. Now, I'm supposed to do this in the next 5 minutes. My media guys behind the camera told me, don't do it sharp. Whereas this is supposed to be up to 3 or 4 hours lecture, divided into series of lesson modules of about 40 minutes each. So I'm going to try to squeeze into 5 minutes what I'm supposed to say in 4 hours. Now, when we talk about the HIV virus, I'd like you to look at it in the light of a cell. In the light of a cell. This is a cell, and it is the smallest unit of life of the organism. It is the smallest unit of life, and we as humans, we are made up of cells. And they all come together to form tissues. Tissues come together to form organs. Organs come together, to form the human body. Now, what is the size of a cell? To give us a comparative understanding of the size of a cell, get a pen like this, make a dot on your palm. Just make a dot. Nigerians, we call it full stop, because full stop actually means full stop. So make a dot on your palm. As tiny as this dot is, divide it about 100 times. One of them is the size of a cell. So 100, if you divide this dot into 100 times, you will get the size of a cell. And then that cell, as tiny as it is a universe. It's a universe. In fact, no scientist as a person understands everything inside the cell. Now, when the HIV virus gets into the human body, its target is the cell. Its target is the cell, and we're going to follow its journey and see what it does, not on the nucleus, which is exactly its point of action, but it does something else at the mitochondria. Something at the mitochondria, which is a self-preservation mechanism. The virus is very smart. It wants to keep itself alive. Therefore, it knocks at the very root of our immune system. And we're going to find out that the reason we're going to go through this is so that you can understand how to knock it out. A problem properly understood is already a problem half solved. Now, in order to discuss what the virus does in the human body and what it does to our immune system, how it knocks out our immune system from its very root, we must discuss oxidative stress. Now, what is oxidative stress? That's the question I'm just about to answer. Now, for the cell to be stable, for you to be healthy, there is a need for a balance between pro-oxidants and antioxidants. Oxidation is the idea of oxidation is setting something on fire. That is the simple understanding of oxidation. Now, there are agents that cause oxidation. They set our body on fire. There are agents that cause this oxidation. You can call them pro-oxidants. There are the free radicals, there are the cytokines, and then there are also the chemokines. And then there are other agents in the body. Some are designed by the body, some are designed outside the body to manage the inflammation, to manage the pro-oxidants, the free radicals, the reactive oxygen species, those things that cause injury to the body. There are other agents that help us to keep them in check. They are called antioxidants. Vitamins are antioxidants, minerals are antioxidants. There are also enzymes and non-enzymes that function as antioxidants. Now, inflammation is not completely all bad. Pro-oxidants that cause inflammation, cytokines, the chemokines, the free radicals that cause inflammation within the body are not completely all bad. Let me give you an example. For instance, if I scratch my body, or if somebody gives me a slap and there are marks on my face, that's an inflammatory response. Free radicals respond to that impulse. Now, it's not completely all bad. It also helps us fight infections, fight germs. For instance, if somebody is injured and is bleeding, immediately the human body responds with free radicals to fight off germs that can come in from the outside. Now, when the pro-oxidants and the antioxidants are balanced, you are healthy. But if for any reason your body's ability to produce antioxidants that neutralize free radicals, if our body's ability to produce antioxidants reduces such that there are now more pro-oxidants than antioxidants, that system is said to be under oxidative stress. I don't know if you got me, but you are going to understand it in the next few minutes. Now, these are agents that cause inflammation. They are called the reactive oxygen species. It begins with oxygen. Oxygen is good. It's the molecule of life. We depend on it. But beyond oxygen, there is the superoxide anion. There is the peroxide. There are the hydrogen peroxides, the hydroxyl radicals, and all that. Now, all of us, we can relate with this. If you have ever had weak gums, you had injured gums, such that when you're brushing your teeth in the morning, you start feeling the bleeding. When you come to the pharmacy, normally you are given vitamin C, or you are asked to take enough oranges. So these oranges contain vitamins. The vitamins you are given at the pharmacy, or the ones you get from oranges, they are antioxidants. What they do is to neutralize the free radicals that are causing this injury in your gums. So when the vitamins neutralize these free radicals, then your body can heal itself. So at the moment when you have this going on in your mouth, your mouth is said to be under oxidative stress because there are more free radicals in the mouth now than your body's ability to neutralize them. You need to understand this. Please just get it. And if you understand it, you've already understood everything we're going to discuss about HIV. HIV is able to enforce its impact in the body by way of oxidative stress. That's why I want you to understand this. If you understand that each time you have a weak gums, that what you do is to take vitamins to neutralize the free radicals that are causing the injury in your gums. If you understand this, then you've already understood what we are going to be describing. Therefore, when your body is healthy, is when there is this balance between the pro-oxidants and the antioxidants. If you can achieve this, then the virus cannot have any impact on you. So the virus comes in to upset this balance. And once it successfully does this, then the immune system falls apart. Then the person develops the acquired immune deficiency syndrome, and then the person is exposed to the diseases, and then the virus is able to throw the knockout punch. Please understand this. Now, if you are fighting any infection whatsoever, and especially if you are fighting, if you are dealing with the HIV virus, you must get to know about nitric oxide. The failure of nitric oxide in your body is exactly the problem why the immune system falls apart. You've never heard this before, and that's why I told you at the beginning that today you are going to learn a lot about yourself. Nitric oxide is okay. Let's listen to Dr. Valentine Foster. This man, as at 1998, was the president of American Heart Association. He said this about the discovery of nitric oxide. He said, the discovery of nitric oxide and its functions is one of the most important in the history of cardiovascular medicine. Nitric oxide is the most important. Its discovery is one of the most important in the history of cardiovascular medicine. And again, the discovery of nitric oxide is an interesting journey. I would have told us the story beginning from Ferid Murad in 1976, who discovered the mechanism of action of an organic nitrate drug that was manufactured in 1847, used in treating acute angina or sharp pain in the chest. So Ferid Murad worked on that drug and discovered that its mechanism of action involves the release of nitric oxide, which activates CGMP. Now, which activates CGMP and then opens up the blood vessels and helps to correct acute angina or sharp pain in the chest. Beyond that, Professor Luis Ignaro in 1980 discovered that in the blood vessels there is a factor that relaxes the blood vessels. He didn't know what it was, so he called it EDRF, endothelial derived relaxing factor. He didn't know what it was in 1980. He published a paper on Nature Journal and called it EDRF. Between 1980 and 1986, there was a rush between scientists to discover what EDRF is. It was in 1986 that the same Professor Luis Ignaro, working independently, discovered that EDRF was actually nitric oxide. And then also the same year, Professor Robert Foshgott, also an American, discovered that EDRF was also nitric oxide. And then in 1992, the International Scientific Journal called Science called nitric oxide the molecule of the year. He called it the molecule of the year. The molecule of the year. Now, in 1998, on October 12th of 1998, These three gentlemen, these three American scientists, were awarded the Nobel Prize on the 12th of October 1998. They were awarded the Nobel Prize for the discovery of nitric oxide. Now, what is it about nitric oxide that rises to the level of a Nobel Prize? I told you, if you are HIV positive, you have to pay attention to nitric oxide because that is what the virus is after. The virus is going to knock out nitric oxide so that your immune system will not be able to fight back. So what is it about nitric oxide that rises to the level of a Nobel Prize? The answer to that question came on the very next day after these three gentlemen were awarded the Nobel Prize. And I can find the answer from the New York Times magazine. New York Times magazine had this headline on October 13th of 1998. They said three Americans awarded Nobel for the discoveries of how a gas affects the body. If you read down, it says three American pharmacologists were awarded the Nobel Prize yesterday for their surprising discoveries of how natural production of a gas, nitric oxide, can mediate a wide variety of bodily actions. These actions include widening of blood vessels and thereby helping to regulate blood pressure, initiating erections, battling infections, preventing the formation of blood clots, and acting as a signaling molecule in the cardiovascular or nervous system. Did you see that? These are the wide actions of this gas. Widening the blood vessels to regulate blood pressure. If you are hypertensive, nitric oxide production and nitric oxide signaling has been compromised. If you are suffering from erectile dysfunction, it's nitric oxide. And again, to battle infections, and that's where we are going to focus on. For our immune system to battle infections, it must depend on nitric oxide. Now, there are two ways the immune system fights infections, bacteria and viruses. The way the immune system fights bacteria is different from how it fights viruses. Now, I'm talking by the immune system, I mean the myocytes, the neutrophils, the phagocytes, and especially the macrophages. In fact, one study showed that for macrophages, or the white blood cells in our blood, before it can battle an infection, or in response to the presence of pathogens. Pathogens are microorganisms that cause infections. Now, in response to the presence of pathogens, macrophages can provoke the production of nitric oxide up to 1,000 times the normal amount, so that it can, for bacteria, our immune system wants to suffocate the bacteria by overcrowding it. Or if it is for viruses, our immune system wants to stop the viruses from multiplying. These are two ways our immune system fights infections. One is to stop it from, one is to overcrowd and suffocate the bacteria. But if it is viruses, our immune system makes sure that it stops the virus from replicating. And these two subcellular inflammatory response to the presence of pathogens or microorganisms that cause infections, these two subcellular inflammatory response and both nitric oxide dependent. So if the immune system wants to overcrowd the bacteria, or if the immune system wants to prevent the virus from multiplying, everything depends on nitric oxide. So because the HIV virus knows this, it is going to come straight for nitric oxide through several ways, which we are going to discuss right now. Now, I told us about free radicals. I told us about oxidative stress. The virus is going to provoke oxidative stress. I told us about the cell. I said the cell is a universe. It's as tiny as it is. You make the dot in your palm and you divide it into 100 times. One of it is the size of a cell. And this cell, I said, is a universe. Now, inside the cell, among all the organelles in the cell, there is the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cell. That's where energy is produced. The first thing the virus does in order to knock out your immune system is that inside the mitochondria, there is something called the mitochondrial electron chain, electron transport chain. And that electron transport chain is dependent on something called NAD, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. So the virus comes to suppress the NAD. It suppresses its production, it suppresses its signaling. And when NAD is suppressed, it affects the electron transport chain, which eventually leads to the production of ATP. ATP is the chemical energy of the body, of the cell. So for this cell, as tiny as it is, I told us it's a universe. What gives it energy is ATP. That ATP is produced inside the mitochondria. And the electron transport chain that leads to the production, the conversion of nutrients, like the glucose and any nutrient that enters into the cell, must be converted within the mitochondria to release ATP. And that action is dependent on NAD. So when the virus knocks out NAD, electrons begin to leak. It is called electron leakage. This is one of the electrons that leaks. So when these electrons leaks off, it reacts with oxygen within the cell. There's enough oxygen within the cell. When it reacts with the oxygen, it produces a free radical, a superoxide anion. An anion because it is negatively charged. And this entity is very reactive. It's going to cause damages as we're about to discuss now. So it's important that the body always likes to manage its production. So the superoxide is always neutralized once it is produced. Now, I told us something about the sugar. Our ancestors had this, and now we have this. What is the significance? Now, when you take this, it is rich in fiber. It is still in its natural form. If you want to preserve this, how long do you think you can keep it in the fridge and it will still be useful? Obviously, your time is limited with this. But when you remove the fiber and produce this can stay for 10 years. But this cannot stay for 10 years and still be useful. So the food industry recognizes that and they remove the fiber. So they crush it, they extract this, and then this is thrown away. The fiber is thrown away. Now, this fiber is protective. Assuming you are eating an apple, assuming this were to be an apple juice, how many apples will you eat at a time? How many apple fruits will you eat at a time? The apple contains its fiber, and that fiber is protective. When you eat up to 5 apple fruits, you are going to get satisfied. The fiber will make you satisfied. But when you drink fruit juice, they can crush up to 10 apple fruits and produce a glass of apple juice. It is no more protective. And because the fiber is not there to delay absorption, fiber delays absorption. In fact, there are two publications, one in India, one in Brazil, that study the difference between this and this. And I tell you, one day I'm going to run a teaching on that. The difference between this and the processed sugar is almost like the difference between light and darkness. All the phytonutrients, all the polyphenols, all the the micronutrients inside inside natural fruits, they travel with the fiber fraction. So when you extract the fiber and give me this, you have given me a metabolic poison, because everything is going to the liver, and we're going to discuss what happens at the liver right now. So when you take sugar, there are two molecules in the molecule of sugar, and then they are the glucose and the fructose in a ratio of 50-50. So you have, in this sugar, you have the glucose and the fructose, but the glucose is not a problem. Almost every cell in the body metabolizes glucose, so it's not exactly the problem. But the fructose must get to the liver, is going to the liver for breaking down, or for metabolism. Now, when fructose enters the liver, now first of all, like I said, this fiber is protective. It reduces the amount of fructose that gets into the liver. Whereas when you take this sugar, processed sugar, or any of in this form, remember, our ancestors never saw this. They never had this kind of highly ultra processed foods. They had their foods in their natural form. Our evolutionary history has not prepared us for this onslaught of food, or measured in calories of energy. Our history has not prepared our organs to deal with this amount of energy. Now, when you take sugar, let's remove the glucose. So the fructose is going straight into the liver. Sorry, this is already taking long. Now, it's going to be broken down in the liver, and to prepare sugar or fructose, which is the sweet molecule in sugar, the one we crave for. Glucose is sweet, but not exactly as sweet as fructose. Now, to prepare fructose for energy metabolism, the first step in preparing fructose for energy metabolism is phosphorylation, to add a phosphate group to it. You add a phosphate group to it, so that fructose will become fructose 1-phosphate, and that phosphate group comes from ATP. Remember, we mentioned ATP before as the chemical energy of the body. It costs energy to break down sugar. So ATP donates 1-phosphate group to fructose, and it becomes fructose 1-phosphate. Now, if we continue this pathway down, that means we are going to be discussing we are going to be discussing diabetes and other metabolic dysfunctions like fatty liver disease and all that. I would have shown us how our body converts excess energy in form of sugar like this, follows the pathway called DNL, de novo lipogenesis pathway, and turns excess sugar into fat. A high sugar diet is a high fat diet. Please know that and know peace. Now, let's follow this pathway. Remember that this one donated 1-phosphate group. Adenosine triphosphate is 3-phosphate. After losing one phosphate group to fructose, it drops down to ADP. It donates the enzyme grabs 1-phosphate group from it again. It will drop to AMP, adenosine monophosphate. ADP is adenosine diphosphate, as in 2-phosphates. From here, it's going to continue. The amount there is a divide on the pathway. 2 enzymes work here. AMPK, adenosine monophosphate activated protein kinase, AMPK, is the enzyme you activate when you exercise. It helps you to burn fat. But the amount of AMP, or adenosine monophosphate, that accumulates determines which enzyme you are going to activate? Is it the AMPK or the AMPD? Adenosine monophosphate deaminase. This enzyme helps you to add weight. So sugar and fruit juice, this kind of easily digestible carbohydrate helps you to add weight. There's something else that happens. When you activate this AMPD, it is going to lead to the formation of IMP, all the way it will lead to the production of uric acid. This is where we are going. So for our ancestors who had this, because fiber was protective, because fiber protected them from the amount of sugar that gets to the liver, they hardly activate AMPD. But for us, because we take sugar without the fiber, because we expose ourselves to this easily digestible carbohydrate and sugar, AMP that accumulates is higher. And when it's higher, you activate AMPD, it comes down to, it breaks AMP to IMP all the way till xanthine oxidase acts on it and produces uric acid. Uric acid comes here to activate this enzyme, NADPH oxidase. It is called NOx. There are seven isoforms of them. This NADPH oxidase, or NOx, NOx 1, NOx 2, NOx 3, NOx 4, NOx 5, and then the dual oxidase 1 and 2. There are 7 of them. They will now use NADP to react with oxygen to produce superoxide. I'm just showing us what happens in your body inside a cell that produces the oxidative cells that we talked about. So these actions, this production of free radicals are going to cause damages to your cells. Remember, we are talking about protecting nitric oxide. So when they are in their numbers, look at the reaction that will happen. The superoxide will quickly react with our most precious nitric oxide, which protects our blood vessels. Let me talk about blood vessels. You know, some persons will tell you on Facebook, come and buy our concoction. It will help to clean your blood vessels and all that. Those who make such adverts talking about cleaning blood vessels, and those who buy those concoctions from them, don't really understand the science of nitric oxide. The health of the blood vessels, to protect a HIV patient from having a heart disease, depends on nitric oxide. And inside our blood vessels, there is what is called an enos. There is enos. In fact, within the body, there are two major ways that we can create nitric oxide. Two major ways. The first one is the activity of these enzymes, nitric oxide synthase, and there are 3 of them. There is the enos, which is the endothelial nitric oxide synthase, which you find within all the blood vessels. These enzymes continues to produce nitric oxide. The next one is the inos, inducible nitric oxide synthase, and then there is the nNOS, which is the neuronal nitric oxide synthase. Now, free radicals, when you produce this peroxide nitrite, it is going to uncouple this enos. So when it uncouples the enos, your blood vessels will begin to contract. Your blood vessels will begin to narrow. You develop high blood pressure, and again your cholesterol levels will begin to accumulate within your blood vessels. Now, if this enzyme is not uncoupled, your arteries cannot get clogged. So when they say buy this concoction, it will clean your blood vessels, that's not the science. That's not how it works. For you to clean your blood vessels, you have to restore the integrity of the endothelium nitric oxide synthase, and it is nutrition. It is nutritional supplements. That's not where we are going today. Let's leave that and come back to our nitric oxide. Now, this is the reaction we don't want. We don't want, your body does not want this reaction. This agent is very reactive. It's highly reactive, and it causes damage to the cells. Now, the only answer the human body has to the presence of this free radical, which has been produced within the cell, is the superoxide dismutase. I'd like you to please make sure you remember this SOD. This enzyme, it dismutates, it breaks up this superoxide to produce hydrogen peroxide and to produce oxygen. Oxygen is neutral. It's not going to hurt our cell. Now, the HIV virus attacks this nitric oxide. No, the HIV virus attacks this enzyme, superoxide dismutase. I told us that the HIV virus knows that if our immune system has enough supply of nitric oxide, it can be able to initiate an inflammatory response and knock the virus out. But the virus goes for this superoxide dismutase, so that the SOD, if it is taken out of the cell environment, can no longer initiate this reaction, can no longer break down the superoxide to form the hydrogen peroxide and oxygen. So what happens is that if you knock out superoxide dismutase, or if you suppress it, nitric oxide is not protected. When nitric oxide is not protected, you are going to form plenty of peroxynitrite, which injures your blood vessels. Therefore, the HIV patient develops cardiovascular diseases, heart diseases, and all that. He develops high blood pressure because his blood vessels will begin to narrow. He also develops other serious diseases, including diseases of the neurodegenerative diseases. That's cognitive ability. Sometimes he finds it difficult to recognize people around him. That's in the worst case scenario, and it's all mediated by this agent, the peroxynitrite. So the HIV virus knocks out SOD so that nitric oxide will not be protected. Again, now we still have something that has to be broken down still. This is peroxynitrite. It's highly reactive. Now, if it is outside the cell, if you have an injury, your immune system can mobilize hydrogen peroxide and to help you fight the infection. But within the cell environment, it is destructive. Therefore, the immune system desired to neutralize it. It's still toxic within the cell environment. And it does that by this system, the glutathione peroxidase system. Some of my pastor friends like it when I discuss this, because here you are going to see Trinity in action. You are going to see the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. And this is the most powerful antioxidant system in the body. Our life depends on this. Every single day, our body produces about 40 billion new cells. And the survival of each cell depends on how functional this system is. This is glutathione peroxidase, the enzyme. This is the molecule glutathione, very precious in the immune system. This is when the son has died. This is glutathione disulfide, and then this is the spirit. This is glutathione reductase, which brings the son back to life. We're going to discuss it in the next few minutes. Now, this system, our entire immune system, both innate and adaptive immune system, is built on this. Now, the virus also goes after this. Although the mechanism is not clear how the virus attacks G6PD, but there are some studies have tried to associate um, the activity of the HIV virus to the low level of this enzyme G6PD. G6PD is glucose 6 phosphate dehydrogenase. Now, this enzyme helps in the production of glutathione. That is one. The HIV virus goes for it. The next one is the cysteine. Cysteine is a sulfur compound which the body uses as a building block to form glutathione. So this is 16. The HIV virus goes after this 16. It lowers it, it suppresses it. And if you suppress cysteine, then the production of glutathione within the cell suffers. If it does, your immune system drops. So when this system is functional, look at what happens. This is the father. It is glutathione peroxidase. The father says, who will I send and who will go for me? This is the son. Glutathione offers to go. Look at the reaction. So the hydrogen peroxide that we had here is involved in this reaction. So the father is the catalyst. Glutathione peroxidase is the catalyst in this reaction. It speeds up this reaction. So in this process, the son presents himself for the reaction, reacts with hydrogen peroxide to form water. Water is neutral. Then in the process, he, having given his life, dies and develops. This is the disulfide, which is a non-bioactive form of glutathione. So in this exchange, you find the father, you find the son, and you find the son when he has died. And because he has died, it activates the activity of the spirit to bring the son back to life. So the son, the spirit, which is glutathione reductase, participates in this reaction of bringing the disulfide of glutathione back to life. In this reaction, it imports the NADPH oxidase, brings in the hydrogen ion, and this glutathione reductase sponsors catalyzes the reaction, produces back the glutathione, recycles it, and then you now have NADP plus as the product, which can also be you can still recycle it back to NADPH through the pentose phosphate pathway or through the HMT shunt pathway. So sorry, I'm making you go through all this, but I want you to see how important these two enzymes are, this superoxide dismutase and this molecule glutathione. And then the NAD, we discussed NAD, which, remember, that's where all these processes started. The HIV virus was able to knock out the NAD so that there is electron leakage within the cell. This system I just described, if these are not working, the cell is injured and the cell dies. Sorry, I took you through all that. I hope it's not very painful. I know you don't like chemistry, but I had to show you that because by recognizing the steps at which your immune system helps to protect you, you can now know how you are going to help yourself. This thing is going to help you to decide which supplements you are going to do, you are going to take to knock out the virus. Now, let's go to literature where we see a few things that validates what I have said. This is a publication. It's entitled on PubMed. It's entitled Nitric Oxide and Viral Infections: Recent Developments in Antiviral Therapies and Platforms. Please, let's read what they said. They said nitric oxide is a gasotransmitter. It's a gas and also a transmitter of great significance to developing innate immune response to many bacteria and viral infections, while also modulating vascular physiology, as in maintaining blood blood vessels, as in keeping the blood vessels open. Now let's see this part that we highlighted. He said the generation or the production of nitric oxide by the upregulation of endogenous nitric oxide synthesis serves as an efficacious method for inhibiting virus replications in host defense and warrants investigation for the development of antiviral therapies. Did you see that? Okay, let me take it again. Let's read this area that is highlighted. He said the generation, or I would prefer to say the production of nitric oxide from the upregulation of endogenous nitric oxide synthesis serves as an efficacious method for inhibiting viral replications in host defense and warrants investigations for the development of antiviral therapies. Did you see that? This is remarkable. What they are telling us here is that the way to produce nitric oxide in excess amounts is to upregulate or to increase the activity of endothelial nitric oxide synthase. These enzymes, that when you activate these enzymes, when you upregulate their activity, that's what the immune system does. It will when you activate these ones, it will increase nitric oxide production, and that nitric oxide production prevents viral replications. The power of virus is to multiply its numbers, and our immune system does this by activating these enzymes to produce more of nitric oxide to knock out the virus. But for the modern man, you no longer have enough of nitric oxide synthase. Our activity with sugar produces peroxynitrite, which uncouples these enzymes. I don't want to take us into the science, because it will take us into discussing 5, 6, 7, 8 tetrahydrobiopterin. These two work together to produce nitric oxide, to reduce L-arginine to L-citrulline and release nitric oxide. But this product uncouples it because we are taking sugar. Again, we have beneficial bacteria in our mouth through all the way through our intestine. Their job is to help us break down nitrates. Nitrates are the organic chemicals or organic nitrates that we get from green leafy vegetables. But because we use very strong toothpaste, and we also use antibiotics, it kills the good bacteria. We are no longer able to. Those bacteria, humans cannot break down those organic nitrates in green leafy vegetables. So the bacteria breaks it down for us, breaks down the nitrates to nitrites, and then we can now convert it into nitric oxide. These are the two main basic ways in our body, how our body produces nitric oxide. So let's continue. So for the modern man, these methods are compromised. Then for the HIV virus, it comes to knock out these enzymes, SOD, and then glutathione. This is superoxide dismutase. This is glutathione. It also knocks out the NAD, so that nitric oxide will not be protected. When nitric oxide is not protected, you produce more of peroxynitrites, which uncouples the enzyme nitric oxide synthase, so that your immune system can no longer produce enough of nitric oxide, and then it can engage in an inflammatory response. So this way the virus is able to knock out your immune system. Let's check this publication. He said HIV infection decreases intracellular nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. So it's only saying that HIV infection decreases NAD. We've discussed that. I just wanted us to see the publication so that you know that we are not just saying these things from our head. Again, there is this study on chimpanzees. A study was done many years ago in 1996 on chimpanzee. They infected chimpanzees with the same virus that affects humans. So when you introduce HIV virus into chimpanzees, it doesn't have the same effect it has on man. And the question was why. This paper discussed it, and they saw that the reason is because the reason that chimpanzees do not collapse to HIV is because the HIV virus is not able to suppress SOD in chimpanzees. So the HIV is able to suppress superoxide dismutase in man, but cannot do it in chimpanzees. That's why chimpanzees do not die of HIV virus. That's what this paper is saying. And again, this one is on cysteine and glutathione deficiency in AIDS patients, a rationale for the treatment with N-acetylcysteine. We won't discuss this now, but what it is saying is what we have said before, that HIV virus likes to suppress cysteine, which can be used to produce glutathione. So cysteine deficiency and also glutathione deficiency is a problem for HIV patients. Again, most importantly, look at this publication. It says that glutathione deficiency is associated with impaired survival of HIV in HIV disease. What this paper is saying is that for those who have died from HIV, those who have lost, it is because their glutathione levels was very low. That's what this is saying. That's what it's saying. And again, let me show this one very briefly. Within the cell, there is the DNA, both at the nucleus and also at the mitochondria. And the DNA has a component called the guanine. Guanine is that point on the DNA strand that has the lowest ionization potential. Therefore, free radicals that are easily produced in the body of a HIV patient, those free radicals always like to attack the DNA from the position of the guanine. And when they damage the DNA, what is produced as a side product is this hydroxylated guanosine. It is called 8-hydroxy-2-deoxyguanosine. It is measurable either in the blood or in the urine of HIV patients, and it's always very high. It's a sign that there is DNA damage at the level of the cells. When DNA is damaged, your cells will lose both their structural integrity and their functional integrity. Therefore, you cannot be discussing of reversing the HIV infection without considering protecting the DNA. And drugs and chemicals and drugs cannot protect the DNA. It is nutrition. It is nutrition. So, in summary, I'd like to show us this important publication by our doctors at the teaching hospital in Lagos. They studied, the paper is entitled Investigation of the Levels of Oxidative Stress Parameters in HIV and HIV tuberculosis co-infected patients. They studied HIV patients and they also studied HIV patients that also have tuberculosis. And they saw that the level of oxidative stress in their body is very high. So this is their recommendation. So they ended the paper. This is the last thing they said in their conclusion. They said it may be advisable to always incorporate exogenous antioxidants in the regimen of HIV and HIV tuberculosis co-infected patients. This is doctors advising fellow doctors. And they're telling the doctors in Nigeria that in the light of what they saw by research, it is important that when you are managing a HIV patient, you should include an exogenous antioxidant. Exogenous means that it is gotten from outside the body. Antioxidants is talking about nutrition. They are talking about nutritional supplements. They are telling their fellow doctors that when you are managing a HIV patient, you need to include nutritional supplements. It is coming from Nigerian doctors, and this paper has been ignored. An important paper that cost a lot of money to do this research and published it has been ignored. Now, if you are a HIV patient, I want you to know this. Using nutritional supplements to boost your immune system to knock out the virus is no longer an option. It has to be the first option. Therefore, incorporating nutrition to protect the superoxide dismutase, to restore it, to restore energy levels, and to restore glutathione levels is essential. It is crucial. It is critical. Many years ago, I used to like football. And whenever Super Eagles lost a match, it hurts my feelings. I cry so much. Because of that, I had to literally kill my desire for football. And then because nature abhors vacuum, I had to manufacture another sports that I like. And somehow I ended up in boxing. I like to watch boxing. And then I realized that sometimes, most times, during the every 3 minutes break, that 1 minute break they give them, the coaches do a lot of work to motivate their fighters. And I like to pay attention to what the coaches tell their fighters. Some years ago, when Roy Jones Jr., Adu JJ, fought Antonio Tava on the one corner, Roy Jones' coach was telling him, we have him, as in talking about Antonio Tava, as in we have him where we want him, therefore he must remain there. On the other corner, the coach was telling Antonio Tava, he said, why are you resting? He said he told him to do more work at the ring. So he told him, work hard now, you'll be resting all day tomorrow. So I love those kind of motivational speech. Now, in 1992, there was a fight between Michael Mura and the great Evander Holyfield. During the fight, Evander Holyfield was going to win. But somewhere along the line, Evander Holyfield had a heart attack, a mild heart attack. So he had a sharp pain in his chest, so he couldn't throw punches, but he managed to stand on his feet and was, just managing to get by. So when the coach, Teddy Atlas, the coach of Michael Mura, saw what was happening, he told his fighter something I want us to hear. Please listen.
But Moore, playing the reluctant warrior, never pressed his advantage. His trainer, Teddy Atlas, finally had enough of Moore's unwillingness to do more than merely jab his way to victory. And when Moore returned to his corner after the 8th, he found a frustrated Atlas sitting on his stool.
Listen, this guy is finished. It comes a time in a man's life when he makes a decision. He makes a decision to just live, survive, or he wants to win. You're doing just enough to keep him off you and hope he leaves you alone. There's something wrong with this guy. Back him up and fight him.
So did you hear that? He told him, there comes a time in a man's life when he makes a decision. Do I just want to survive, or do I want to win? There comes a time in a man's life when he makes a decision. Do I want to survive and just keep getting by every round, or do I want to win? As a HIV patient, it's great to be going for your drugs every month and you're taking the drugs every single day. Is that how you're going to live for the rest of your life? There comes a time in a man's life when he makes a decision to throw that knockout punch. Everything we have discussed today is to show us that the HIV virus is not as powerful as we thought it is. It is not as invincible and as unconquerable as we were taught to believe. The HIV virus is vulnerable. It seeks to knock out our immune system. And when we empower our immune system along these lines, we can be able to throw that knockout punch. There comes a time in a man's life when he makes a decision. If you're an HIV patient, there are certain supplements that we can recommend that could help you get the job done. If that day has come for you, if that day has come for you to make that choice, there's a WhatsApp number on your screen. Send a message to that WhatsApp number on your screen, and let us lock hands with you and throw the knockout punch on this virus and knock him out. There comes a time in a man's life when he makes a decision.